Morning, members of the press. Morning, colleagues. Let me thank you for responding to our invitation to be here at this press conference where we're going to be discussing matters related to our upcoming vice presidential elections. Let me introduce the members who are here at the head table and the capacity in which they are. To my immediate right is Senator Donna Scott Motley, who is the chairperson of the monitoring committee established by the party. To her right is the deputy chairman of the party, Horace Daly, who is also a member of the internal monitoring committee. To my left is the party chairman, Comrade Fitz Jackson, and to his left is our legal advisor, Comrade Michael Vassiana, who is also a member of the monitoring committee. I think you know all the candidates, but I'll just introduce them. Fenton Ferguson, Philip Powell, Angela Brown-Burke, Damian Crawford, Michael Phillips, and Wickham McNeil. The purpose of the press conference is to outline the procedures and the code of conduct that all the 6 candidates will be required to sign, and some other mechanisms that the party has put in place to ensure that the elections are run in a spirit which is consistent with fair play, with camaraderie, and to ensure that if there are behaviors which deviate from the norm, there are mechanisms to hold those persons to account and to ensure that the elections are fair and above board. I'm going to invite Donna to outline the details of the code of conduct and some of the other arrangements that the monitoring committee will put in place.
Thank you very much, General Secretary. May I add my own welcome to the members of the press who have found it possible to be here. We think this is a very important occasion in which we're demonstrating the kind of governance that we have internally, and we are also attempting to be as transparent as possible. So you have heard about the Election Monitoring Tribunal, and you have been introduced to some of the members. Let me tell you just a little bit about what that function will be like. We will be monitoring the conduct of the parties. And in terms of having a tribunal, we are also ensuring that if there's any sort of concerns or any feeling that any injustice is being done, that there will be a tribunal to whom appeal can be made. So that the decisions of the Election Monitoring Tribunal are really final. After we complete our investigations and we hear the matter, then they are final, save and except that decisions relating to disciplinary matters will be subject to a hearing by a disciplinary committee. And decisions of that disciplinary committee relating to disqualification or removal from office will be subject to further appeal to the executive committee of the party. We have introduced campaign financing rules. It's like a kind of dry run for what we will have to do in the future. And so we have put a limit on spending. We'll be requiring reporting after the election is completed. And for this reason, because the returns are to be made 30 days after the election, for this reason, the election tribunal will have a lifespan of 60 days after the election will be held. But to go to the more important part, what we are asking our candidates to do this morning is to sign a code of political conduct. You will ask yourself, is this absolutely necessary? In terms of the way in which the candidates have conducted themselves, so far we have had absolutely no complaints. And they have all demonstrated a level of comradeship and integrity of which we are extremely proud. But as I said, we are going into our 80th year, and we thought it was important to demonstrate the kind of governance which the People's National Party embraces. So the persons will agree that the interests and reputation of the party is paramount, and that they will ensure that their campaign and other activities will in no way cause damage or injury to the party. Of course, you all know that sometimes it's not the candidates themselves, but their supporters. So we have tried to bind them in a way to their supporters' conduct. And we ask that all reasonable efforts to ensure that members of the campaign team and supporters will behave with the utmost dignity and decorum and accord respect to all other candidates and party members. They will agree to conduct their campaign in such a manner as to enhance the democratic traditions and reputation of the party, to avoid personal attacks or the denigration of other candidates, and to conduct a fair campaign and refrain from any threats to voters, that is to get votes by threat, bribery, or other improper means of inducement. A big one is to comply with the social media guidelines of the party, because social media is usually where it gets a little rocky. And as I said previously, we have had so far absolutely no complaints. I intend to share a copy of the Code of Conduct, which contains other paragraphs, with the press. And of course, we will make available the candidates for the position of vice presidents will be available to you if you have any questions to ask. But at this time, I'm going to ask them to step forward while the legal advisor to the party, Mr. Michael Vassiani, will preside over the signing.
So we are going to get up and we'll ask you. We need one more. Yeah, let's use it.
We all are seated.
There's no preference. So that's it.
That's it.
There's no preference.
In the middle. Well, I'm hoping there's one coming from the top.
One copy.
Well, there's one. Okay.
Yeah, you go bed.
No. This is on the heat.
Yeah.
Right in the wrong hand.
Sure it's not the wrong signature.
Yeah, but the pen come down.
Yeah. Thank you.
Chairman, do we kiss?
No.
Let me do it off this side.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Candidate.
Okay.
Candidate.
All right.
That's it?
Yeah.
Short and sweet. You wish the election was as easy as
I'm
this.
telling you. I'm telling you.
No, our nomination day.
I know it.
We are open to questions from the media. Just identify yourself and the media house that you are representing. And you'll have access to the candidates after, and you can interview them after. But if there are any questions you have for
They
us,
could spend all day with the candidates.
if they so desire.
so desire.
If they so desire.
Damien has to
Yes,
go to the side.
Erica. Hold on, sit down.
General election, Colonel Charles declared that he spent $127,000 to campaign for that seat down there. Do you believe it?
Not 27 million.
Erica, the Electoral Office of Jamaica is the body that really invigilates the returns that are made by candidates and should do an investigation to determine the veracity of the claims that are made by candidates. So I don't want to comment on a claim that I haven't seen or I don't know the details of. What I can say, going forward, the new campaign finance regulations are a lot more detailed, and there are significant penalties if persons are found to be in breach of those regulations, including not reporting factually. There are significant penalties. But I haven't seen the return, and I don't want to comment on his.
I'm asking this to ask that when these candidates declare that they spent $5,000 to campaign for the election, how are you going to prove that?
I don't want to preempt. We expect the candidates to abide by the rules that we have set and to report honestly on their expenditures. If we get to a point where we have to take particular actions, then we will. But I don't want to preempt that at this stage. It is a new process. It's the first time that as a party we are implementing this. There is a learning curve, but I expect all the candidates to abide by the rules and report honestly.
May I add a comment, Erica? We have tried to be realistic in terms of the amount, the cap that we have put on spending. We have put a cap of $5 million. We sincerely hope that nobody will find it necessary to spend anywhere near that. But it is also in a way to address the whole thought that somebody would have to reduce or feel that they're obliged to report a small amount in order to conform with the law. So we have been very expansive, but deliberately so. I
I saw it.
yes.
Yeah.
That sounds low.
Why? What's the concern? Well, I think you can speak to the candidates. Candidates have to make arrangements for their supporters, transportation, meals on the day, etc.
5 million is the max. It's not the
Candidates are moving around now, meeting with delegates. So there are expenditures that are incurred. But we're trying to deal with your first question, which is you don't want to set an unrealistic target. And you set a target that you believe people can honestly report on.
I don't want to force them to lie.
No. Sure. Sure.
What constitutes bad behavior on social media? Is it one an Erica rant on social media?
If they're well, you may have been banned based on some of the things I've seen you put, right?
You walked into that
But
one,
what I would
Erica.
say, Erica, we are doing it two ways. Proactively, we have members of the secretariat team who will monitor the official social media accounts of the candidates, and we have asked them to provide that. But we also know candidates have supporters, and we are also monitoring posts. So if there is something which is derogatory put up about a particular candidate, then we anticipate we are going to be proactive in indicating to the person, and we don't expect candidates themselves. Some manage their own social media, some have managers, some have supporters who do it. But where we believe something brings the party into disrepute, that is where we will act. And we are holding candidates accountable for the actions of their supporters and surrogates.
Let's present them. Let's present them.
Any other questions?
One by one. We do
You
one
want to
by one.
present?
Well, the question was not necessarily relating to
That's true.
the
Fix the one.
vice presidential race.
And the one, fix the one, then I'll do one.
Okay.
You do one.
Alright, so first of all, let me start with crime. You know, the PNP has always said that the government needs to get crime in check. But based on statistics released by the police over the last month, there have been big gains in terms of reducing violent crimes and murders when compared to December period last year. I think the figure is almost 4% decrease in murder for June over the previous year. What's the party's reaction to what has been a steady decline in crime over the past couple of months?
Well, first of all, the People's National Party welcome any and every reduction in major crimes, murder, shootings, etc. That's what we have been demanding of the government for the longest time, to be proactive to arrest the spiraling increase in murder. It had been before 2016, but it got significantly worse 2017 into 2018. They never responded. Doing nothing caused the problem to get worse. We suggested some interim steps that they could take in targeted areas like St. James, like Clarendon, Westmoreland, and the corporate area where the murder rates and the shooting levels were very high. The government did nothing. They did it for 2 years, did absolutely nothing until it got that worse. And they ended up using the most extreme legal and constitutional provisions there are, which is the state of emergency. They started with the Zozo, which demonstrated it was a failure in dealing with crime. And so they reverted to state of emergency. In fact, the state of emergency is an acknowledgement that the Zozo was not a viable response. State of emergency in St. James that had the highest levels of murder. In the last year, you had 335 murders in St. James. You blast the area with security presence, the military, the JCF, you suspend all constitutional rights, etc. What do you expect? Must go down. Notwithstanding the fact that you do have a few murders in St. James, even with the state of emergency. It is the reduction in St. James that have brought the drag on the reduction nationally. So when you look at a 13.7, 13.8 reduction year on year up to last week, that was a result essentially of St. James where you had a huge increase. And by the way, with even the reduction year to date over last year, it is still higher than 2016. The levels now is higher than what it was at the end of 2016. It's lower now than 2017 this time, but it is still higher than 2016. Even in St. Catherine, the murder rate is higher this year than it was even last year with a limited state of emergency in the North St. Catherine Police Division. In the corporate area, which was one of the highest murder and shooting area, the levels of murder and shooting in the corporate area is still higher than last year. And that's the reason why we said in the debate for the extension of the state of emergency, we can't allow these reductions to give us a sense of false security. Because the government has not come forward yet with any plan, at least that we are aware of, and the rest of Jamaica is aware of, that can reduce the crime and the murders on a sustainable basis. What happens after the state of emergency? Is it going to be a perpetual exercise? Is it the government response to fighting crime, state of emergency? That is what we have been calling for, and in fact the rest of Jamaica. The business community, civil society have joined us in making this demand, and the government is yet to respond. And it's for that reason why, while we celebrate the reduction, we take no comfort in that. We welcome it, but we need a lot more. Jamaicans need not only to feel safe today, next month, next year, and the year after. We are seeking a sustainable, long-term crime reduction strategy.
So essentially, you don't get credit for cleaning up the milk after you spill it.
You said it.
Moving on, it was announced yesterday that the government plans to decentralize the BOJ, make it an independent entity that should be free from political interference, free from the whims of the government at the time. What do you make of the government's move in that light with the BOJ?
Well, that's a discussion that has been around for a long time. It's a long time. We have a small economy, and that impact, and quite frankly, as many commentators, experts have said, the extent to which you can have independence. But I don't want to comment, personally don't want to comment until we see details of what is proposed. They say the devil is in the details.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Alright,
Want to talk about Wheatley?
I was going to say that fast. Sorry, what did you mention? Nationwide news. Alright, in terms of the some say spiraling exchange rate, some say fluctuating exchange rate. In terms of the exchange rate, persons have been anxious that it's going up, and with that prices go, things like that. But the government has been giving it a positive spin. It's only a fluctuation, and they expect it to level out. And there have also been talk that they believe that it's good for business in the long run, because it means that persons who are only tiptoeing in the Jamaican waters will leave, and only serious investors will remain in the economy. What say you on the government's response to the exchange rate and where it is now?
Well, a devaluation always hurts the poor the most, because it has given the high import nature of our economy, even things that we produce, there's going to be an effect. There's going to be an effect at the level of gas prices. There's going to be an effect at the level of electricity rates. There's going to be an effect at the level of transportation, and as such, all goods and services. So we must be concerned when what we have witnessed over the last couple of weeks is a steep depreciation in the currency. Now, the government, even if there's going to be an independent Bank of Jamaica, the government still has responsibility for policy to ensure that our economy is on the right track and that you have a stable exchange rate, and that those policies lead to more foreign exchange earnings and less dependence on foreign exchange. So, of course, as a political party, we are concerned about what seems to be an exceptionally steep depreciation in the currency, and without, I would say, an explanation as to what is causing it. We have always had greater demand for foreign exchange than we have had supply. That has been a factor for 40 or 50 years. So that alone can't explain it. And I think there's been an absence of an explanation from the government to say exactly what has triggered this depreciation over the last couple of weeks. And we haven't heard one that I think either satisfies us or the sector groups. I mean, the JMA, JEA, they have come out strongly. People are made orders on goods and materials at a particular rate. 3 weeks later, the rate has depreciated. They're going to have to pass it on to consumers. So the consumers are ultimately the persons who are going to feel the effect of this depreciation the most.
So when Minister of the Finance Ministry, when she says it's actually, because of growth in the economy and because we're importing more for production and things like that, it's not an adequate explanation for the.
Well, it's certainly not adequate to us, neither to the sector groups nor the people who are feeling it, right? Who are feeling it on the ground. I mean, I can tell you personally, I know filling up my tank, I have had about $1,000 increase just filling up my tank in the last couple of weeks. People are going to see it reflected in their light bills. You're going to see it reflected when you go to the shop and the supermarkets. They will have to, because the oil, which is a pass-through, if there's a depreciation, the price of oil is going to go up, which means that the price to consumers will also go up.
And as the Gensec mentioned about the price on gasoline, the government has caused it to be worse by continuing to charge the edge tax, the cess, without a hedge fund. In fact, they are fraudulently collecting this money because it is not being used for what it was intended for what we came to Parliament and said it would be for. So, it underscores the lack of principle on the part of the government.
And what is important to note, there will be absolutely no protection for consumers if oil prices continue to increase. The tax that we had implemented to put the hedge in place does not exist. So as oil prices go up, there will be no protection, and the consumers will pay more, primarily to fund the 1.5 promise that the government made. That is why they removed that the hedge.
More appropriately, 1.5 bit. But if I may just make a comment about the crime situation. On the weekend, the leader of the opposition made the comment about question about the monies being spent in the state of emergency and whether you're getting good return. Let me make it abundantly clear. Every activity on the government will cost. To deal with a problem, it will cost. The question that is always present, how is it to spend each dollar in the most efficient way? From the response we have gotten from the government, which is partial, it amounts to roughly $30 billion per year, per month, extra for just the JCF. $30 million, sorry. $30.8 million per month, right? For just the JCF. It does not include the JCF costs, JDF costs, which is a significant amount. And the question that we ask, the opposition asks it, and we all ask it, could we have invested this money to get the reduction that gives you a more sustainable result? That's simply what we are asking. Every life is important. And we don't believe that nothing should be spared to save every life in Jamaica. But we also have a responsibility to spend the taxpayers' money in the most efficient way possible. Because while that 30 million is being spent per month, in Montego Bay alone, doesn't include St. Catherine North either, we have hundreds of persons being murdered throughout the rest of Jamaica. Their lives are also important. The fear that you and every other Jamaican experience is important. So fighting crime and violence is not just about reducing the levels of murders and shooting. It is to create an environment that every innocent, law-abiding citizen can get up in the morning, go about their business, their church, their work, their school, their play, and feeling safe. That is what is the responsibility of the government. And we do not see that increased expenditure is in any way helping to create that environment for the Jamaican people.
Erica.
Chairman, the 5%, any wage agreement that was signed with the dollar at 124 to 1, 5% is now wiped out. The police have yet to sign, and there is nothing to say that they are going to be accepting any 5%. Question. The police are all over the country with the states of the Zojo and yes, whatever. Can we afford? How long can we afford to keep the police agitated, not paying them and given the running of the dog?
Erica, I think we need a press conference to just deal with that alone.
Yes.
To be frank, because to be honest with you, I feel awfully distressed when I hear the government speak about the matter of crime and violence in this country. Because there is an absence of sincerity in dealing with the problem. If the problem is as stark as the Prime Minister makes it out to be, how is it that you have a wage settlement for the men and women on the front line be unsettled for this extended period of time? The people who get up every day and leave their families to stand in the line of fire on our behalf, you have failed to settle their wage settlement, settle their wage agreement. What is it? Is it an incapability of the government to sit with a team of persons, reach a wage settlement in the shortest possible time, given the exigency of the matter? Mr. Daly, who have been in the portfolio recently, I was there before, we settle these things in an expeditious way, because we recognize and appreciate the importance of the security forces to deal with crime and violence. The Prime Minister himself has failed. The same Prime Minister who told the country, don't vote for the People's National Party if you want to have your windows and your door open. And for 2.5 years, the Prime Minister has been unable, either unable or unwilling, but certainly have not done it in settling this most important matter. How can I feel that the Prime Minister is sincere when the police that need motor vehicles to multiply their presence across the country, to respond to a telephone call from a distressed Jamaican citizen, can't get a car to go to make that response. And when they do something, they took the worst cars and gave to the police some used cars. And they bought the most high-end, expensive vehicles for themselves. How can I really believe that the Prime Minister is sincere when he speaks about crime and violence? And I must tell you, in the state of emergency, the report I'm getting on the ground is that the policemen are about to fall apart. Because they are stressed, they are working long hours, their families are complaining, their food supply is questionable and inadequate. It is, we need a press conference for that alone.
But given that the opposition supported the extension of the
State of emergency and Zozo.
Right. Aren't you also part of the problem in helping the government to prolong this stress on the police force?
We did not want, and we said it in the debate, we did not want to compound a bad situation by causing the security arrangements in those areas to immediately collapse. And that's the reason why we said at the previous extension, give us the basis on which you would want our support. Give us some clear indicators that will bring this state of emergency to an end. Up to now, I can share with the media. Not today, I don't have it with me. The government don't even, either they have it in their head, but they're not willing to share. What is it that will cause you to say the state of emergency has reached a success point that it can come to an end? They seem not to have a clue themselves. And that's why we are distressed and worried.
All right. Any other questions?
Just one. I think this may be for Mr. Caldwell.
No. I'm going to ask you if it's specific to...
The candidates.
No.
Oh, not a candidate question.
No.
Oh.
Okay. So we talked about the hedge and the hedge money and no more hedge, but still the tax. I want to, when it was being collected under your administration, did it go to the consolidated fund? And if no, where did it go and where is it going now? Because certainly we've been trying to find out how much money has been collected. We can't find out. So I'm trying to find out where did it go and
He is sitting here not as a candidate now, but as the shadow minister.
Yes. Yes, certainly when the tax was imposed, the hedge was established, and we did secure insurance up to a strike rate at the time of $60 per barrel. So yes, we did put in place the hedge. We did use it for the purpose for which it was established. And of course, by the second year, we were into election, and the new government did not continue it. But in the first year of the tax, we did buy insurance at a strike rate of $60 per barrel.
Are you able to say how much was collected in year one?
No, I can't say that, but I think the average collection rate is about 2.8 billion Jamaican dollars
Per what?
per annum. That's what is collected.
And just for clarification, and when it was collected, did it go into a special fund or did it go to the consult?
Yes, I believe at the time it went to the consult fund, but it was used for the first year for the purpose for which it was collected.
We have a little presentation.
That's the final question. So the PNP called for Andrew Willie to be removed from cabinet. That's still not yet. That still hasn't happened. What's next for the PNP?
Well, we continue to make the call, and I will tell you, we are not going to sit in the parliament when Mr. Wheatley stands as minister in that parliament. It is a disrespect to the parliament, and on the opposition side, He has a right to be there as a member of parliament. We respect that right. He was voted in by the voters of South Central St. Catherine, but we will not have any regard for his ministerial position. And anytime he rises in the parliament to speak as minister, we are definitely going to be out the chamber. We're not going to walk out, we're going to be absent during his intervention. We have no regard for his ministerial authority.
Plus, as you will,
Huh?
plus, as you can tell, the matter has not ended. We do intend to probe further all the other ministries, and especially those within the science and technology portfolios, because we are seeing evidence of similar systems, similar failures that we have determined so far at Petrojam and latterly at Nessel.
I wanted to say one thing. Over the last 2 days, there have been revelations related to the Spectrum Management Authority and the actions of the chairman, Trevor Forrest, in trying to impose someone who had not applied for a position and in pressuring the then managing director to interview this person. Based on his actions and what we consider to be a clear breach of the procedures related to recruitment, we believe he's unfit to remain as the chairman of the Spectrum Management Authority. He's also the deputy chairman of the Universal Service Fund Board and the e-learning board, and we believe he should be removed from all 3 boards. Someone who clearly demonstrates no regard for the policies, the systems that are put in place to protect the agencies should not remain in any of these positions. So we are calling for his removal from the 3 boards on which he sits, and for the government, and in this case, the Prime Minister to act. Because as Mr. Paulwell said, we are seeing in other areas of Minister Wheatley's portfolios the same issues which took place at Petrojam. The cronyism, the corruption, they are in other agencies outside of just the energy portfolio. And his actions demonstrate that the minister, he is also the senior advisor to the minister in the Ministry of Science and Technology. And he should be the one who should be protecting and enforcing the rules. But yet still it was evident that he was trying to break the rules to suit a particular individual. That is the beginning of the cronyism, which leads to the corruption. So he's not fit to remain in any of those positions. And he should be removed. And the Prime Minister needs to take action because it is very evident that the problems that emerged at Petrojam, which exist at Nessol, which exist at the Universal Service Fund, and now we are seeing it at Spectrum Management Authority, cover the entire portfolio of the science and technology portfolio.
Government.
All right.
So there was a call to sack Minister Wheatley, and the opposition said if that doesn't happen, then they withdraw cooperation with the government.
No, what we said, we'll consider our cooperation.
Yeah.
And we do it on a day-by-day basis, issue by issue as we go along.
Oh, so it wasn't broad brush.
No.
statement, like-
No.
We met the analysis and we determine how we move forward.
And with so far what resignation, party expecting the rest of resignations like that.
Well, let's see. I mean, there are other persons whom we know got into positions without following due process. Some of those will emerge, right? And we expect action to be taken. At Petrojam, there's already been, the general manager has been separated. There are other people who need to be separated. But importantly, the persons who have been separated, including the members of the board, must be held accountable for their actions. Separation alone is not good enough. Where persons have breached rules, where persons have committed fraudulent actions, they must be held accountable, whether they're still within the organization or outside of the organization.
But further to the point that the Genset made about the due process in the engagement of persons, it goes further than that. They have breached due process and engaged persons who are not qualified for the positions. that they are placed in. And the end result of that is the Jamaican people get less than desirable service in return. We saw what has been revealed with the HR manager at Petrojam, where the competence was just not there. It then speaks to the quality of organization you're going to have and the quality of service that the entity provides to the Jamaican people. So it's not just about the due process, as important as it is ensuring that quality service by these entities are made available to the Jamaican people, which is our duty to protect.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
And your campaign manager? Yes.
On behalf of the party, thank you for signing the code of conduct. And we are going to present you your copy of the code of conduct. I wish you good luck.
Thank you very much. And we will ensure that we Senator Damian Crawford.
Where's your campaign manager?
And your campaign.
No, pick up that one. Senator Crawford and Mr. Parrott. Oh, yes. Thank you for signing the code of conduct. We wish you all the best, and we give you a copy for yourself and your campaign team. Mr. Dr. Fenton Manuel.
Congratulations. Well, thank you for signing the code of conduct, Dr. Ferguson. I'm confident that as an experienced parliamentarian, I'm confident you will adhere to the provisions along with your team members. All the very best. Congratulations.
Mr. Wickham McNeil.
Dr. Martin, thanks for signing the code of conduct. I'm confident that you will adhere to the provisions.
Greatest campaign manager.
Make sure that your team members comply with the provisions. All the very best. All the best.
I'm going to ask the legal advisor to make the last two presentations, Mr. Philip Caldwell.
And your campaign manager.
And your campaign manager.
Natalie Nita is very busy in the field. Yes, she's connected.
Congratulations on your nomination. And thank you for signing the code of conduct. And all the best.
And Mr. Michael Phillips, I don't know if it's easier to go to Mr. Phillips.
No impediment.
I can assure you he was not involved in any confrontation. Facebook.
Who's the comment? Who's the comment? I campaign manager. Again, congratulations on the nomination. Thank you for signing the code of conduct. And we are confident that you and your team adhere to the principles of the area. Congratulations again.
And thank you all once again.